U.S. has reached a tentative agreement with the Egyptians and Israelis to be able to use that Rafah border crossing with Egypt to allow safe passage for U.S. citizens seeking to leave Gaza.
The Rafah crossing in Egypt was due to be open for 6 hours today to allow foreigners to leave the Palestinian territory. Now, that includes 150 people with ties to Canada.
The Egyptian government is in talks with the U.S. and Israel on allowing humanitarian aid to pass through, but it won't open corridors for Palestinians to leave Gaza.
So are people with two passports going to be able to leave Gaza? What's the situation with the two passport theory? Why the advantage? I'm going to discuss this in a lot more detail. Now, there is some negotiation going on between Western countries, the US, Canada, potentially UK, and Egypt to allow Gazans, right, the Palestinian people in Gaza with a second nationality from either of these countries to use that safe passage, the 5-hour time frame where these dual nationals or people with two passports could potentially be allowed to exit. Again, the time frame is lapsing. The deal hasn't been struck yet, but that is the whole idea. That is what the Western countries are focusing on. In the second part of the video, I'm also going to discuss why a NATO passport, and I'm going to discuss some feedback from our expat on the ground, and why a NATO passport can be a critical plan B strategy. When you talk about a plan B strategy, it's not about one passport. It's an idea which could have multiple passports. So you definitely want to have, if you can, at least one BRICS aligned passport and one NATO passport, and your home country could be a NATO country. Let's say it's a Western country, US, Canada, whatever. In case of a conflict or war, and I'm not saying that there's going to be any war, hopefully there isn't, but just in case of that scenario with the heating conflicts around the world, you just never know. You got to be prepared. So as part of your plan B strategy, having a NATO passport could have some critical advantages. It's going to be super important. Before we get started with this all exciting topic, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, make sure to turn on the bell notification and subscribe so you don't miss out on the latest coverage and any new programs. In the third part, as the bonus, what I'm also going to discuss is how do you get one of these passports from each of these different entities or areas. This is going to be super important. Now, first, let's jump on to the Egypt situation, right? The Gaza, Israel, and Egypt situation. Now, for Gazans who are trying to flee, Egypt has created a blockade. They're not allowing people to escape. But let's say you have that second, all-important second passport, and we all discuss about how important and critical and life-saving that second passport is. You had the infamous example of Gons who used the Lebanese passport to flee persecution from Japan. So that Lebanese passport, a weak passport, saved his life. But let's say in this situation, if you had an American passport or a Canadian passport or whichever one of those Western countries, right, that are negotiating. So there's that diplomatic consular access that's constantly trying to save you from that situation. So let's say they negotiate a deal with Egypt. And if you're presenting yourself, let's say a Gazan is presenting himself or herself, or the family is being presented at the border, the Egyptian border. If you're from this third country, right, so your Palestinian passport, your Palestinian privileges would not apply because that's the conflict state. Maybe Egypt does not allow refugees. It does not allow the people in that conflict zone to escape. But let's say you are a third country national, then your primary citizenship does not matter because you're not dealing with your home state. You're dealing with a foreign government. For a foreign government, you are the citizen of the country that you present yourself to be. So if you're, let's say, a Canadian citizen with a Gazan nationality or Palestinian nationality, your Canadian nationality will prevail because that is what you're presenting. That is what you want to take precedence over. So they will honor that and they will let you escape. Now, mind you, this hasn't yet been put in place. They're working towards a deal. That is the advantage of having that second passport in a conflict situation. If you're bordering any third country and you're presenting your foreign nationality, then you can exercise your diplomatic rights to escape, to flee that situation in case of an emergency. Now, let's jump on to the second very interesting part. Let's say you're from a Western country. You're an American, Canadian, Australian, British, or whatever Western country you're from. In case of a conflict and a direct attack, right, in which whatever situation we are talking about, and you're looking for a plan B, you're looking to exit immediately. You don't want to be in a country which is under war or which is under conflict, and you're taking precautions. You're trying to flee ahead of time, then as part of your plan B, you need to have at least the right passports or right citizenships. And one of the big things I'm going to discuss in this video is the advantage of having a NATO passport from a non-Western country. And I have one of my advanced members. And if you aren't an advanced member, here we have an army of on-the-ground experts who are sharing real-time intelligence on these matters. So I have Patience's Alpha, who said Turkey is part of NATO. Better airline in Turkey. Now, I said I agree with the airlines, but how does being part of NATO create an advantage for expats? Infected Voice here says, I don't see being part of NATO as an advantage, but rather as a burden. Neutrality is the key. Now, I do agree with this, but to establish the neutrality, you want one BRICS and one NATO ideally, right? So you have the balance, you fall on either side, and then you can pick and choose during times of conflict which way you want to swing to keep yourself safe. Now, let's continue with his feedback. I would rather say for Turkey, it's a political advantage. Don't underestimate how they play their membership cards. So Turkey is pretty smart, right? They have the NATO, they have their alliances outside, so they're doing a smart thing with that. Most of Europe bend to their will these past few years. So Europe has been swinging back and forth. They present themselves as Western, but to avoid some of the geopolitical tangle and the situation, they also have their alliances outside. So they're trying to neutralize the situation. So Turkey being in that region plays a very important part. And he continues saying less physical risk. NATO troops acts as shield in many cases. That's why Qatar bought every type of fighter jets available. They always have French, US troops on their soil for training, etc. Brings them peace. Egypt did the same with Rafale and the Mistral boats. If I were to pick one, it would be Turkey because of that. Not as squeezable as Egypt, in my opinion, not 100% aligned with Europe, but also not misaligned, shot down Russian planes. So my response to him was, good point. In case of a World War situation, again, we don't hope that happens, but in case of a World War III situation, at least one would be comparatively safer in their plan B country. So if you have a BRICS country, you feel that's safer, you have that advantage. If you feel you want to be on the Western side, that's much safer, then you have a NATO passport. He continues, Turkey hosts 50 plus nuclear weapons for the US. So definitely the NATO has some power, has some advantages. It has all the Western countries lobbying and trying to save that nation. So if you have a NATO passport, and it's important to note that this NATO passport should ideally be part of your plan B strategy, right? Your plan A could be NATO, but if your plan A is under attack, then at least you want to be in another NATO country, and that should be your plan B strategy. All right, so that out of the way, now I'm going to discuss what are the options. Let's look at BRICS and break it down, right? So Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, right? So let's remove India and China out of the equation. They don't allow dual citizenship. You can't have multiple passports, so those countries are out. Let's narrow down on Brazil. Now, Brazil has 4 ways of getting residency, right? It starts at 28k USD and goes all the way up to 200k USD. If you're investing more than 200k, it's going to be absolutely flexible permanent residency. There's a clear pathway to citizenship in Brazil. If you have a child in Brazil, then you're looking at naturalization after just 1 year, right? So you have some unique ways of qualifying for the Brazilian citizenship. And if you have missed my coverage on Brazil, make sure to check out my video on Brazil. It covers all the 4 options in a lot of detail. Second is Russia. Interestingly, Russia is offering free citizenship to foreigners, and although I don't recommend it, it's an important part of news to be aware of what this whole matter is. Why is President Putin offering free citizenships to nationals? There have been reports of a lot of Nepali nationals who are flocking to Russia to obtain a Russian citizenship. Again, unconfirmed reports, but there's a lot of material out there which talks about this. If you have missed my coverage on what this Russian free citizenship is, you can check out this video. The third on the list is South Africa. Again, like Brazil, South Africa is a hot option, and I'm saying it's hot because at 6,800 USD, right? $6,800, you can qualify for direct permanent residency. This is one of the most flexible permanent residencies you can get. Of course, if you're looking to convert this permanent residency into citizenship, then there's some minimum physical presence on the ground that's required. But if you hit that, then you can qualify for your South African BRICS passport. So this is really the BRICS side of things. Now let's focus on NATO, and I'm going to cover one country which is non-EU and the other country which is in the EU. So the first country which is non-EU is Turkey. It has the NATO feature, right? It's part of the full member of the NATO. And with Turkey, if you're investing 400K in your own property, so this is effectively a free citizenship, right? So you're purchasing your own condo, a property, a couple of properties for 400K, or just depositing 500K in the bank account, in your bank account in Turkey, then you can pick up a free, almost free citizenship from Turkey. It's an interesting passport. It's a perfect complement to your Western passport. It is a non-Western country. It's a Muslim nation, but at the same time, it's giving you those NATO features. So this is something immediately available to you. So that's the first option. The second option I've covered about Estonia. Now with Estonia, there's a unique feature where you can instantly qualify for the Estonian passport. Now this has a specific criteria. Not everyone qualifies for this. So there's two other options, or let's say 5 other options that are covered, which allow you to obtain a residency in Estonia and then work towards that EU citizenship. Estonian passport is one of the most powerful passports in the world. So you have an option right there. And these are not just the only citizenships or the ways for obtaining multiple citizenships. If you want to learn about all the 6 ways of obtaining multiple citizenships, then make sure to hop onto this video. This covers every single detail on all the ways that you can qualify for multiple citizenships. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel, and catch you in this one.